What did you notice? When I was 17, I stood on the edge of the world. It was my senior year of high school, and my UU youth group was spending the weekend on the Oregon coast for our annual fall retreat. After a day filled with team-building activities, deep listening, and more than a few s'mores, a group of us decided that we wanted to go down to the beach. It was 10, maybe 11 p.m., and the rest of the campsites were silent and empty. We took the winding trail through the beach grass, the boardwalk slowly disintegrating into sand beneath our bare feet, laughing and talking loudly, knowing that there was no one around to make us be quiet. The moment was soon broken, as a few of my friends leapt off the path and into the sand dune, screaming wildly as their feet carried them to the water. I followed them down, feeling the cries escape from my body and disappear into the great nothingness that surrounded us. When I got to the bottom of the dune, my lungs burned from the combination of running and shouting, and I paused to catch my breath. Exhausted, I gasped for air, looking out as I adjusted to the shift in surroundings from the top of the dune to the water's edge. Besides my small youth group, there were no signs of human life or even human influence besides a distant lighthouse and a faraway ship. The sand was smooth, newly washed in with the tide, and the beach grass obscured any houses that could have been lining the shores. And as I fastened my attention to the sound of the waves crashing up on the beach, my friends' voices faded into the background. My breath, just returning to my tired body, caught in my throat as I looked out at the ocean. As far as I could see in the dusty moonlight, the waves of the ocean rolled on. And even though science told me it was just the curvature of the earth, at that moment, I was on the edge of the world. What did you hear? The doors opened automatically, and before I had even a chance to look around and orient myself, my feet had dragged me forward to the room where the infant was crying. This was a few weeks ago. I was halfway through my summer program as a chaplain intern at a hospital, and I had been working with babies in the cardiac NICU, checking in on their families who prayed over their tiny bodies. Today, though, there was no family around. This baby was all alone, surrounded by tubes and wires, keeping his heart beating and blood flowing. I walked into the room feeling utterly helpless as I stared down his scrunched up, bawling face. "Hi, little baby," I said. I spoke to him in a calm, quiet voice, telling him about his sisters and his parents, asking him about his socks, recounting the day's adventures to him. I watched in awe as his cries faded, his voice softening into a peaceful smile as he drifted back to sleep. I don't know how long this baby will live. I don't know how much he will suffer. I don't know how often his family will cry out, wondering what this little baby could have done to deserve this pain. But I know he is loved. I know he is cared for. I know his cries will be answered, blankets will be tucked around him, forehead kisses freely given, and soothing words murmured to him as he sleeps. There is gratitude in that. When did you admire? Last month, when I preached at this congregation and Zach asked the children during the Time for All Ages about righteous anger, remember that? Anger is okay sometimes, they said, if it's for a good reason. And there are ways to express anger, like protesting, like the Black Lives Matter protests. I sat up there on the chancel wondering if I even needed to preach that day. I've been saying it since I was a child, but truly this next generation of Unitarian Universalists aren't our next generation. They aren't our future. We are our present. Congregations are one of the last multi-generational spaces we have left. We must do everything we can to keep them that way. The wisdom of the children, the curiosity of the elders, the laughter and mutual aid and caring notes passed around by every member of our community, no matter our age. As I grow older, as we all grow older, I wonder about the future of Unitarian Universalism. In 50 years, in 100 years. But if we can keep teaching our values, encouraging all of us to learn and explore and ask questions and love, oh, if we can teach ourselves to love, and most importantly, do all of these things as Unitarian Universalists, living deep into our Unitarian Universalist faith, then I do think it will be okay. For that, I'm grateful. What astonished you? Now, say what you want about the Olympics, but it is a joy and a gratitude that we get to witness some of the greatest athletes the world has ever seen. Saya Sakakibara, the Australian biker who won gold in BMX wearing her brother's number on her jersey, who broke down in tears afterward because he was there, cheering her on despite suffering a horrible crash in 2020 that left him in a coma for 2 months, and despite her own wipeout at the Tokyo Games that crushed her spirit. Our own Katie Ledecky and Simone Biles. Katie Ledecky is now the most decorated female swimmer in Olympic history and is only the second swimmer ever to win the same race in 4 straight Olympic Games, doing it the first time at the age of 15, by the way. And Simone Biles, who struggled with her mental health, who focused all her energy on getting better and fought her way to an epic comeback to become the most decorated American Olympic gymnast. There's Alona Mar, the US rugby player who preaches body positivity and acceptance, who helped the women's sevens team make history by earning its first ever medal, and the first medal for US rugby, period, since 1924. Iman Khalif, the Algerian boxer whose win in the second round of the competition this year has been overshadowed by all of the judgment and slander about her eligibility to compete. The transphobia, misogyny, and racism that has emerged is truly astonishing and a powerful reminder that we have so much more work to do. I admire her and her family's resilience throughout all this hatred. Lola Anderson, the British rower who won gold, secretly wrote about her dreams in a diary at the age of 14, only to have her note handed back to her 7 years later by her dying father as a reminder that even when she didn't believe in herself, he always did. And judo champion Clarice Agbenyanu, who has been a trailblazer for women's rights in sports and worked tirelessly to ensure that breastfeeding athletes received hotel rooms during the games, brought her daughter with her to training and held her aloft after winning the prize. I could keep going, because these powerful women are only a small subset of all of the incredible athletes who have worked so hard to get to where they are today, who have found something they loved and worked towards it. I am so grateful we get to witness their dedication and their strength. What would you like to see again? My great-grandmother, my Oma, smiling with her 7 children around her, and the dozens of grandchildren and great-grandchildren she loved so dearly. The bonds of family, whether given or chosen, are beautiful and strong. I've been doing a deep dive into my genealogy on my father's side. My family on that side was primarily from Austria-Hungary, Italy, and England. I was originally looking into it to see if I could get Italian citizenship. Spoiler alert, no, because of the patriarchy. But in doing that research, I learned so much about my relatives that I hadn't even realized before. My middle name, Neva, is a combination of ancestors on my mother's and father's sides of the family. My mother's maternal grandmother, Neva, spelled N-I-V-A, died just months before I was born. My father's paternal great-grandmother, Eva, spelled E-V-A, was gone long before then. And my name, Neva, N-E-V-A, honors both of them. Both of these strong matriarchs are ancestors I hold dearly due to our shared name, and I am grateful for their legacy. What was most tender? The night I spent at the Columbia encampment protesting the university's support of the Palestinian genocide. I stayed up until late in the night, prepared for the police to come and tear down everything we had worked for until I dozed off around 3 a.m. I woke up a few hours later to discover a blanket had been tucked around me on the chilly tarp as I slept, a moment of care I hadn't expected. We keep us safe. We keep us free. A week earlier, when white supremacist Christian nationalists marched in front of the gates of Columbia, my colleagues and I sang "This Little Light of Mine" and stood proudly in defense of our liberal and progressive religions, refusing to let the far right claim religion for themselves. After the protest, many of my colleagues were traumatized and exhausted from being yelled at and reminded of some of their harmful Christian evangelical upbringings. I put a kettle of hot water on and poured steaming mugs of tea for each of them as we breathed together and processed the experience. The scents of lavender, elderflower, and rose hips wafted through the air as we held each other in the space. These moments of connection and care, in the midst of extreme violence and hatred, were filled with tenderness and reminders of the humanity we all share. What was most wonderful? When I used to see a rainbow, I always wished I could follow it to the end, and maybe a little part of me was hoping there'd be a pot of gold there, but I really just wanted to know where it ended. Now I've learned rainbows are a scientific phenomenon. They are what happens when sunlight and rain collide. I think there's something beautiful in that. Our Unitarian Universalist faith calls for us to find meaning in all places, from scripture to art and even science. Marveling at nature's beauty, appreciation and gratitude for the wonders of science, a rainbow is such a miraculous thing to witness. Rainbows for me are the very epitome of gratitude. Out of conflicting emotions and elements comes something beautiful. In Genesis 9, after God has sent the flood that has destroyed nearly all living beings in the world, God promises to Noah that she will never send a flood again. "This rainbow is my covenant with you," she says. "Whenever you see a rainbow, remember my promise." In the midst of great tragedy and destruction, that rainbow was a sign of God's love. Our Universalist tradition reminds us that God is love. And every time I see a rainbow, I think of that. These days when I see rainbows, it's often in pride flags or another expression of queer joy and solidarity. The original pride flag's 8 colors represented sex, life, healing, sunset, nature, magic and art, serenity, and the spirit of the LGBTQ+ people. Yet another example of the ways in which pain and sorrow and rage and joy and hope and gratitude coexist with one another. I think about gratitude the same way I think about rainbows. Gratitude is alive to all that is, a sibling of sorrow, a cousin of rage, so aware of the ache and the loss and injustice, but still seeing cause to pray, thank you, thank you, thank you. So now, I turn it over to you. What did you think was happening?
Hi, welcome to Fourth U's Getting the Message. My name is Corinne Seeger. I use he and they pronouns, and I am the acting religious education assistant here at Fourth U. And I'm joined by a repeat guest here in Fourth U. We're so excited to have you back, Karishma Gottfried. Can you just give a reintroduction to all the folks in our Fourth U community?
Yes, absolutely. It's so good to see you all again. My name is Karishma. I use they and she pronouns, and I am about to start my second year at Union Theological Seminary. I'm just wrapping up my chaplaincy internship at New York Presbyterian.
Very exciting, very exciting. We're so happy to have you back, and we are so excited for the amazing sermon that you all just heard. I very much enjoyed it, and I'm so happy to chat with you for the next couple minutes. So, getting into this, this sermon this week is a lot about gratitude and the focus on that in your everyday life. How did this come about? How did this decision to introduce gratitude into your work and personal life come about?
Yeah, I mean, gratitude is a really important part of my life in general for me. So it just felt natural to kind of think about a sermon that focused on that. I found the practice of gratitude to be a really important part of my spiritual practice and in keeping me centered and grounded and connected to the things around me. So I wanted to share some examples from my life and encourage others to think about where gratitude shows up in theirs.
That's really amazing. The aspect of having gratitude as part of your daily routine, that's such a powerful practice. And excuse me, seen not just in Unitarian Universalist, but almost every faith tradition in the world, and just in a lot of practices of spirituality. So how does that work? I'm not someone that has gratitude in my daily practice, although I would love to have that. So where do people start with that gratitude journey?
Yeah, I mean, some options I'm not very good at filling it out every day, but I do have like a little gratitude journal where, it's just a simple practice to kind of list out the things on my mind that I'm grateful for. You can do it in the morning or the evening. You can do it on a notepad. You don't really need like a special journal. You can do it on your phone. But just to kind of think about the things you're grateful for. And it can be really small things like, just having, like waking up in the morning. Or it can be like bigger things if something important has happened in your life. But I think part of the practice is just listing the things out, because sometimes, you have hard days and it's hard to feel grateful for anything, or if you have things to be grateful for. And so reminding yourself and getting into the habit of like, I woke up this morning. If you're able to, like, I'm able to breathe, because not everybody's able to do that, like, well. Or I had like a really delicious meal, or I got to talk to a friend. Like those little things, they don't happen in the day-to-day, but really remembering that they're not things to take for granted, and they're important to remember and be grateful for.
So listing things out, celebrating the beginning of this fall, really good practices. I really appreciate that advice, and I will let you know how that goes as I start it. So in the Unitarian Universalist faith, we do have to talk about the correct way to practice things always. And I think a lot of people, especially in more Judeo-Christian conservative religions, think that in order to have gratitude practiced correctly, you have to have like this faith in a higher power or gratitude in a higher power. Do you think that that is a prerequisite for having gratitude practiced correctly?
Absolutely not. I mean, as Unitarian Universalists, we have a wide range of faith and spiritual and religious backgrounds. We have people who believe in God. We have people who believe in multiple gods. We have people who don't believe in any God. We have people who just don't know. And I don't think that you need to know or even have any specific belief to be able to practice gratitude. I mean, honestly, I actually come at it from a very humanist perspective of like, wow, all of us working together in this broken world and doing the little things, and also from like a religious naturalist perspective of like, wow, like all of the bounty of the world and nature and all of the beautiful things. I mean, here at Fourth U, we're right across from the park. Just walking here today, seeing all the trees and seeing the nature just made me feel so filled with gratitude for this beautiful natural space we have in the middle of our city. And that has nothing to do, I mean, it could have something to do with God, but it doesn't have to. And so I think that's absolutely not an important part or a necessary component. It might be important.
That's really insightful. Thank you for assuaging some of my worries, and I'm sure some people that have different theistic beliefs, that's really a powerful statement. Before I let you go, I did want to ask quickly about the reading. So it is a very unique reading. There's these 8 very powerful questions in today's reading. Can you maybe talk about the decision to include this reading and what you feel like the purpose it served working in with your sermon? Because I really enjoyed this reading. I thought it was a very powerful reading for myself.
Yeah. As you saw in the sermon, this reading is very tied into the way I kind of structured the sermon. And it's interesting, a lot of the time I have an idea for the sermon or I start writing it, and then I go find a reading that fits in with it. I use the UUA worship web tool, or I'm just like Googling things or looking through books I have. But for this sermon, I thought about the idea of gratitude, and I thought about this Mary Oliver poem, because who doesn't love Mary Oliver? And so I was reading this poem, and I was reading it to myself like over and over, and just, really, it's so full of imagery and these questions like you were saying, and I was like, I want to answer these questions for myself, and I want to invite others to answer these questions. And so, like, as you saw in the sermon, that was my attempt in a less poetic way than Mary Oliver, but adding these little vignettes of places of gratitude in my life based on these questions. And that's also, I really invite you to take this poem into your life and maybe think about how you would answer all those questions. I turned the last question over to you, but really all of them are questions that I want to hear your thoughts on.
I really appreciate that insight, and I would just really appreciate you being here with us at Fourth U. Do you have any closing thoughts about your sermon, or any closing words of wisdoms for us as we close out today's sermon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just so grateful for all of your hospitality and welcome this summer and all of the other times that I've preached. It's been really wonderful to see you guys on a more regular basis over the past few months. And I'm really excited for Reverend Sam coming and your journey with him. He's a great guy, and I hope to be back, but I'm looking forward to hearing how your ministry and your journey with him goes as well. So best of luck.
Yeah, the door is always open to you, Karishma. We're so excited to have you back, and we're looking forward to having you back many, many times. But thank you so much for today. We really appreciate you. And we really appreciate you all for tuning in. We will see you next week for more Getting the Message. Have a great week, Fourth U.